Florida. As we know, we have people visiting from all across the United States and the world right now. And for those of you who are joining us on YouTube and Facebook, please, if you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll do my best to get it to Bob and Don ASAP. So just put it in the comments. For everyone who's joining us and they're either aware of this going on or they have friends who they want to be made aware, we have all our events posted on www.clearwaterbaha'is.org. That website, if you go to it, you can just copy the link and just send it to them. And on the home page, you'll see the event that's going on for the week. We post it weekly, the week before. So that being said, Bob and Don, there are good Baha'i friends who we know definitely. Bob has been away, sadly, for a year, but he is here. He has returned in video spirit.
He has returned.
And now that we've got Bob, I want to turn it over. Bob, introductions.
Thank you very much, John. And thank you all for coming. It's dear friends, my Clearwater friends, my friends all over Florida. So happy to be back here on Gulf to Bay Boulevard. And even if this is a Zoom meeting, I must say that a giant piece of my heart is with you today in that beautiful spot, surrounded by caring and loving people. And I'm thrilled to see your smiling faces. Before we get started, I would like Jeremiah to put up a slide for us. And it is a hidden word that has inspired me and it really cheered my heart.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. It has really helped me over the last 52 years. Jeremiah, do you want to put that slide up? It's slide number 1. Here we go. O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Imagine that by our deeds and our actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Okay, you can take that slide down now, Jeremiah. Thank you. Next to me, I have a dear friend I want you to meet, Don Camp. Don, wave at everybody so that they know who you are. He's sitting there in front of one of his very famous photographs. Way back before the earth cooled, I met Don at a conference at the Philadelphia Baha'i Center. And when I first heard him speak and I saw how much the Baha'is loved him, I knew that I had to ask him to be one of my first 3 assistants on the auxiliary board. He was generous enough to say yes, and we have been friends since 1977. Don and I had a bunch of stuff in common. Don and I were both newspaper photographers. He was at one of the most prestigious papers in America, and I was not. He went on to an academic career in fine art, and I did not. He won many awards for his work photographing African-American men, winning fellowships and grants from the Guggenheim Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Pew Fellowship, and others, and I did not. He has books of his photographs published. Most notable is Dust-Shaped Hearts. It's an astonishing body of very large portraits done in dry earth pigments. It's an incredible innovation in the photography world. I did not do that. Don did so many things to distinguish himself in the world of art and technology. He's an emeritus professor of fine art photography at Ursinus College. He was also very active in the service of the Auxiliary Board, the Black Men's Gatherings, and the Baha'is of Philadelphia, serving on the Philadelphia LSA for decades. And just this past Wednesday, Don was honored by the Association for Baha'i Studies at their annual conference. His photographs were shown during a marvelous interview with him about his experience. If you look behind him, you'll see part of a giant photograph that he has made. He's photographed, Muhammad Ali, John Lewis, many famous men, and his photographs are really something else. You can look him up online. So, two elderly retired friends, Don and Bob. We speak to each other quite often, usually over some very good food. We share our major frustrations with the world around us and how disappointed we are at the slow pace of our progress on our primary mission, which is to promote the unity of humanity. In many conversations, we lament the widespread impression that we are actually going backwards when it comes to race unity, and that some of the advances we had celebrated have now been erased. So when we are saddened and depressed, we look to our faith to show us the best way to respond, what we need to be doing right now. And just last month, our prayers were answered, and we are so thankful for that. The message from the Universal House of Justice, dated 22 July 2020, just 18 days ago, has galvanized both of us. It made us look at ourselves and what little we feel that we have done up to this point. Together, we decided that we had to do something much better, even if it's the last thing we ever get to do. And we decided that we would bring to this gathering our best ideas so far, share it with you and ask for your feedback and ideas. And then we would just keep working on this justice issue until we stop breathing. This pivotal message from Haifa was the topic of consultation at the Feast of Kamal just 10 days ago. I need to read this letter 10 more times and to see how I can answer this dramatic and timely call to action. Don and I are busy working on our future actions, and we're working on that together. Just to quote a teeny bit from that letter, the House of Justice says, "A moment of historic portent has arrived for your nation as the conscience of its citizenry has been stirred, creating possibilities for marked social change. The House of Justice wants America," and this is a quote, "to create a consequential reform in the social order that will free it from the pernicious effects of racial prejudice." End quote. This is such a crystal clear call to us. This call is so pointed. They mean for us, each of us, to take it very personally. They quote from the Advent of Divine Justice, that 1938 letter to the American Baha'is from Shoghi Effendi. Quote, "A tremendous effort is required by both races if their outlook, their manners, and conduct are to reflect in this darkened age the spirit and teachings of the faith of Baha'u'llah. Let neither think that the solution of so vast a problem is a matter that exclusively concerns the other. Each one should endeavor to develop and assist the other toward mutual advancement." 1938, Shoghi Effendi said, "Assist one another." And Don has done this for me for 40 years. His friendship means the world to me. His advice, his loving encouragement, his patience and wisdom has held me up for a very long time. And now together, we are understanding that we have reached a jumping off point. We must get into the action. The crisis is too great for us to wait any longer. We have waited much too long already. As a very new Baha'i, I was privileged to spend time with many hands of the cause, especially Bill Sears. One day at a conference with William Sears, he was lamenting to us the fact that the Baha'is were not involved more directly in the civil rights movement in this nation. He said that the justice, the fairness, the unity that African Americans were fighting for, being beaten for, and dying for was exactly what Baha'u'llah had called the human race to strive for. Justice, fairness, and unity. Bill recalled the murders, the lynchings, the beatings, the attack dogs, the fire hoses turned on children. I will never forget what he said. He tearfully lamented that the first person across the Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, was not a Baha'i. He said with tears in his eyes, it should have been a Baha'i. And so 50 years later, as an old man, I am resolved that I want to be at the head of the line of people making sacrifices for the cause of justice. The House of Justice advises us, urges us into action. This is their quote, this is their directive. They ask us all to, quote, carefully examine the forces unfolding around you to determine where your energies might reinforce the most promising initiatives and how you might lend a distinctive contribution. Let me, God, make a distinctive contribution, please. For those of you who are familiar with the Broadway musical Hamilton, there's a moment when Hamilton throws himself totally into the fight for freedom from the oppression of the British king. He sees the dawning of the American Revolution, and he says he will not let this historic moment pass. He says, I am not giving away my shot. So in my mind right now, this is my shot. Don and I think that this is our shot. In the very beautiful words of the House of Justice, this is the moment when we can all make a, in quotes, distinctive contribution. Not long ago, someone asked me about the mantra, Black Lives Matter. Didn't I think that all lives matter? It's a tough question. It's an interesting question. And this is what I've come up with as a way to help me think about it. Don helped me with this. My dear wife, Barbara, helped me with this. Many of you know Barbara. My Barbara literally learned how to walk in 1954 by walking with her parents in civil rights marches, all through the 1950s and 60s. So here's my answer today. Of course, all lives matter. But right now we have a crisis, an emergency, and we always have to take care of our urgent needs. For instance, back in 2013 at the Boston Marathon, 260 people were seriously injured and several were killed in those brutal bombings. Instantly, the mantra, Boston Strong, popped up. All around the world, people were saying, Boston Strong, to each other, to give each other hope. The people in Madrid didn't say, hey, what about Madrid? Madrid has problems too. And no one said, hey, Miami has struggles. What about Miami or Chicago or Mexico City? All around the world, people knew that the crisis was in Boston at the moment, and they wanted to show their support. Of course, all cities matter. Right this minute today, everyone is trying to stop the spread of this coronavirus. We're working for a cure and a vaccine. It's the biggest news story in the world. $1 trillion is being spent on this. And we don't hear people saying, hey, what about cancer? What about diabetes or hepatitis? All diseases are worthy of our attention. We know that. But right now, the urgent crisis is COVID-19. As a fire truck comes down the street, they pass many houses, and all of those houses matter. But the firefighters are rushing to the house that is on fire because that's where the crisis is. You and I and all of us find ourselves in the midst of a lingering crisis in our country. The violent deaths of African Americans, mostly men. 17-year-old boy right here in Florida, and a 14-year-old child in Mississippi, and many black men publicly killed on our streets. Many have been killed by officers who were sworn to protect people and uphold the law. And yet the black people die. So now many people are demonstrating with the signs that say Black Lives Matter. They're calling attention to a crisis that has been a reality here for centuries. 4 centuries. And that crisis is still a threat today to many members of our human family. The crisis is that black people are being killed in public on video, shot in the dark of night and in broad daylight and in their own homes. And in many of these cases, no one is ever charged with those deaths. This is the crisis right now. Do all lives matter? Yes, all lives matter. But the crisis right now is so real for so many of our brothers and sisters, it compels us to work for what the House of Justice says is the reform of our social order. And that will help our brothers and sisters who feel so vulnerable. This is a time of peril and risk and fear. And it is tragic that people who already feel like targets in this crisis should feel so alone in fighting this crisis. All lives matter, of course, but lives that are not under threat now, that's not all lives. Right now, that's Black lives. And each one of us has something to contribute here by living our teachings of oneness, unity, and showing love for each other. We can make our own distinctive contribution. Here's an example. In April of 1912, very, very, very few white Americans would give any support to an organization called the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And yet in 1912, who went to speak at the annual NAACP convention? Who went out of his way to support them? Who was it who did what others were afraid to do? Who? It was Abdu'l-Baha. Why did Abdu'l-Baha, the son of the founder of our faith, go to that convention? To lend his support to the cause of justice and unity. Justice. The NAACP was founded in 1908 with a primary purpose to end the murder of black men by lynching. Black men and some women by the hundreds were hanged in public in America. It was lynching, murdering, desecration of the bodies when it was done over and over and over in public, and no one was held responsible. Those murders were seldom investigated or even tracked. Thousands of them. And that was the crisis that started the NAACP. Their monthly magazine is called The Crisis. It still comes every month. The Crisis magazine of May 1912, Abdu'l-Baha was named the Man of the Month for the NAACP for his support of their goals. When the lynching crisis was fresh, when things were the most dangerous in the South and in Washington, D.C., Abdu'l-Baha went there to praise their work and to reaffirm that we are all God's children. When a man says 20 times, "I can't breathe," I think what Bob would do if that man was my friend Don. What would I do? What does that hidden word mean when it says, "Know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other? Ponder at all times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell on the same land. That from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions," this is deeds and actions, "the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest." We can bring forth the signs of oneness. To me, this means that we are all one, that we should act that way. Deeds and actions, he says, we all should claim the same protection, share the same rights, and enjoy the same freedoms from fear and oppression. I want Don to be able to breathe like I do, freely. I never want to hear another man say, I can't breathe. The crisis is clear. The House of Justice advises each of us to carefully examine the forces unfolding around you, to determine where your energies might reinforce the most promising initiatives, and how you might lend a distinctive contribution. Don and I are putting our heads together, and with the help of our friends within the Baha'i community and our friends in the wider community, we will find a way to help in this crisis. We're looking for that promising initiative, and we hope and pray that we find it, and we'll put our energies there. We all want to feel better about this. We all want to know that we are headed in the right direction. In the words of the House of Justice, we will feel better, quote, when you have contributed your decisive share to the eradication of racial prejudice from the fabric of your nation. Please read this letter 10 times. That's enough from me. Let's hear Don's perspective on this 22 July letter. Professor Camp, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. And I see Francis has a Black Lives Matter shirt, which is quite nice to see. When we decided to do this, I thought, who is this guy sitting with Bob? Because I know he has spent a lot of time in your community in Clearwater and loves it. So I'm sitting with him today. And he's told me, he's told all of you a great deal about what I do and what I've done. I want to share with you a little bit of who I am. I was once asked during a fireside if I was a Black man who is a Baha'i or a Baha'i who is a Black man. I don't remember how I answered, but I came to realize that I'm both. Sometimes injustice doesn't allow me to be a Baha'i who is a Black man. Jeremiah, would you put the slide up on the light of men? The following is in the tablet of Baha'u'llah. A sixth leaf of the most exalted paradise. He wrote, the light of men is justice. Quench it not with the contrary winds of oppression and tyranny. The purpose of justice is the appearance of unity among men. Thank you, Jeremiah. But I want to welcome you to my country. I've been here a long time. I'm 80 years old. My father was born in Columbus, Ohio in 1892. He was the son of a man who was born in Virginia in 1868. Now, I don't know if my great-grandparents were free or enslaved, but free or enslaved, it's possible that my family has been in this country for more than 400 years. Family oral history say that my father's mother was Lakota Sioux. So my family, thanks to her, has been here for a long, long time. Welcome. When I was a child, my father taught me that there really is only one race, the human race. He taught me that there's only one God, even though we have given him many names. So even as a child, I never felt confined to the country of the United States, nor confined to one religion. He was 22 years old when Abdu'l-Baha came to America, and he might have heard those principles as Abdu'l-Baha traveled across the country. I became a Baha'i in 1967 when I was 27 years old. My father became a Baha'i when he was 92 years old. He said, "I've been a Baha'i all my life and never knew what I was." We recently lost Congressman John Lewis. He wrote a letter to be published on the day of his funeral, and in it, he wrote of Emmett Till. He and I were both 15 years old when we learned of the death and funeral of Emmett Till. Emmett Till is a 14-year-old Black child from Chicago. On August 28th, 1955, while visiting his family in Mississippi, went to the town store to buy some candy. The woman, Caroline Bryant, owned the store and sold him the candy, and she later told her husband that Emmett Till had offended her. Her husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, J.W. Millen, abducted Emmett Till from his home in the middle of the night. They took him to a barn and tortured him to death. They then tied farm machinery parts to his body, threw it in the river, where it stayed for a few weeks before it was found. I can't give you any further description on this because it's too terrible. The mother of Emmett Till shook the world by having her son's body returned to Chicago and demanded an open casket funeral. She also invited the press to photograph the body. The photographs were published around the world. To many, it was an example of American justice. To John Lewis and to me, it was an example of what could happen to us Black boys if we acted improperly around white people. The murder of Emmett Till changed my life, and it changed John Lewis's life. But it changed our lives in two different ways. Congressman Lewis became a fighter. I gave up and went to sleep. I had been a straight A student. I became a failing student and failed seventh grade. I spent the rest of my teen student years as a failing student who got into a lot of trouble. When I look back, I think I saw no hope, so I gave up. Fight or flight. I went to sleep. I sometimes wonder how many of us went to sleep. Being lynched or murdered or severely beaten was not uncommon in the times of enslavement or post-enslavement. During the period of enslavement, enslaved people could be treated as their owners decided. Post-enslavement laws were written into the books that allowed freed Black people to continue to be used as free labor. One such law was reckless eyeballing. Yes, that's written on a book, reckless eyeballing. It was a law that was on the books in many states throughout the country, and a legal example of the application of this law applied in 1951. I was 11 years old when Matt Ingram, a Black tenant farmer living in North Carolina, was accused of reckless eyeballing, which is the improper looking at a white person with sexual intent. Willa Jean Boswell, a 17-year-old, testified in court that Ingram scared her when he looked at her from a distance of about 75 feet. Mr. Ingram would have ended up serving 2.5 years in jail or in prison had he not been defended by Mr. Ernest Frederick Upchurch, who was a white lawyer. But the all-white jury returned a conviction, leading to a 6-month sentence of labor on the road. 6 months of free labor on a road gang for reckless eyeballing. The woman, Carolyn Bryant, who accused Emmett Till of reckless eyeballing, of offending her, on her deathbed, admitted that she had lied. Now, at some point, I began to wake up and mature. I found a friend, and we got married. My wife is my friend, but even after we were married, I was a bit suspicious of why she married me. I guess I had a lot of things happen in my life that left me feeling undesirable. So why should she want to be with me for her entire life and thereafter? Friends are difficult. We need to make room for each other. And that had to be and that had to happen for my wife and me. She's European French, and I am a Black American. She was a farm girl, and I was raised in a small steel town in western Pennsylvania. Even now, when she sees a cow or a pig on television, she can tell if it's healthy or if it needs better care, and will often say, they need to take better care of those animals. We had little fights as we figured out how we would move forward together. We also had little fights with our children as we tried to teach them how to engage in the dangerous divided world that they were entering. But we love each other, and we knew that we had to learn how to blend our lives. So over our 53 years of marriage, I have slowly accepted the words of Baha'u'llah, O Son of Spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that for which thou wast created. Now it took me a long time to realize this truth and begin to rise for which I was created. And I'm slowly shedding some of the results of oppression. And Marie, she has become my best friend. I also begin to realize that even though I, at the time, understood that God created me noble, perhaps it meant that God created all of us noble, and that we should all rise under that for which we were created. O Son of Spirit, noble have I created thee, but I can't breathe. Eric Garner was a horticulturalist in the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. He has been described by his friends as a neighborhood peacemaker, as a generous, congenial person. He was the father of 6 children, had 3 grandchildren, and at the time of his death had a 3-month-old child. On July 17, 2014, Eric Garner died at the hands of New York City police, saying, I can't breathe. It was a banned chokehold caught on television. Now I ask you, have you ever passed a counterfeit $20 bill? This year, George Floyd died at the hands of a Minneapolis policeman. The crime for which he was being arrested was attempting to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. It was a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 48 seconds, caught and shared on video. He died saying, I can't breathe. He died saying, Mama. And this sort of killing is not new. 100 years ago, attempting to vote could be met with being lynched. Sometimes standing too tall in the presence of a white person would be a reason to be lynched. Acting noble could be a reason to be lynched. 100 years ago, lynching was often a public event. It was a public execution with families present. Families with children traveling for many miles to witness the hanging, the burning, the mutilation of a Black human being. Families having picnics and gathering souvenirs of body parts, a bit of hair, or perhaps a piece of the rope used to hang a human being, buying postcards with a photograph of the person being lynched. Then it was a rope around the neck. This year, it was a knee on the neck. Now, this is a little bit of the history that we as Black people don't often share. We used to be kind of ashamed of sharing it, but we talked about it among ourselves. And I have difficulty sharing the stories of Emmett Till and other stories. I avoid it because I feel like I'm villainizing white people. But Baha'u'llah says, O son of spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. But I can't breathe. Laws and illegal acts, often very violent, have impeded our contribution to our country and of the world of what we have to share. Despite the violence directed at us and the oppositions that we face every day, we have contributed great things to America and to the world. One simple example is Dr. Charles Drew, a Black man. He developed an efficient ways of process and store large quantities of blood plasma in blood banks. As the leading authority in the field, he organized and directed the blood plasma programs in the United States and Great Britain in the early years of World War II. He was fatally injured in an automobile accident in April of 1950. He and three other doctors were driving to attend a medical conference at a southern university near Burlington, North Carolina. Their automobile swerved to avoid an object in the road, and Dr. Drew was critically injured and began to lose blood rapidly. His colleagues flagged down a passing car and rushed him to the nearest hospital. At the door, he was turned away. It was a white-only institution. By the time he was taken to a nearby colored hospital, Dr. Drew, the man who developed the theory of blood plasma and pioneered the blood banks, had bled to death. The Universal House of Justice says, may I have the slide, Jeremiah, please? The Universal House of Justice says that racism deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity. I'm sorry, that's the wrong. We'll go on. To call, I'll just read this one, please. It deprives a portion of humanity the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capabilities and to live a meaningful and flourishing life while blighting the progress of the rest of humanity. The Baha'i Don, who happens to be Black, received a letter from the Universal House of Justice a few weeks ago. And I read it. As I read it, I was struck by two things. The House warns us to not do the things that we normally do. It says, it is not possible for you to affect the transformation envisioned by Baha'u'llah merely by adopting the perspectives, practices, concepts, criticisms, and language of contemporary society. The change requires us to not merely the change required is not merely social and economic, but above all, moral and spiritual. Okay, Jeremiah, may I have the next slide, please? But then they tell us what to do and what our approach should be. Your approach instead will be distinguished by maintaining a humble posture of learning, weighing alternatives in the light of his teachings, consulting to harmonize differing views and shape collective action, and marching forward with unbreakable unity in serried lines. Now, to be honest, I have difficulty with being humble. I find that too often I'm treated unjustly because being humble is often misinterpreted as being weak and or ignorant. I'm often told to be patient, and I do not recall anywhere in all of the letters from the Universal House of Justice and our sacred writings of being instructed to be patient in establishing justice. We are called on to maintain a humble posture, but the complete wording is maintain a humble posture by maintaining a posture of learning. I will not be denied the opportunity to contribute to the establishment of justice in the world. This guy sitting with Bob is someone who will pray to maintain a humble posture while learning. The letter calls on all of us to do this, and I will try. We have been given a wonderful tool in our faith, consultation. So the House continues consulting to harmonize differing views and shape collective action. The letters that we get from the House are filled with encouragement and directives. Many times I feel overwhelmed and therefore sometimes often do little. But I'm being selfish at the moment because my life is on the line again. Out of fear, I sometimes forget about the power of our spiritual responsibility and simply want to fight. But Bob is my friend and I know where he lives. I know what his kitchen looks like. I know how he makes coffee. I know Barbara. I know where he lives. I know what his kitchen looks like. I know he doesn't like oysters. He knows Marie. We know the stories of our children. I pray for his nephew. We are friends. In 2016, after the election, I told my community that I was afraid again. And I was told, and what I'm sure were words meant to comfort me, that there is only one race, the human race. But I can tell you that I didn't want someone to comfort me and then go home. I wanted someone to walk with me. Now, I don't make friends easily because it requires that we share trusting each other. Bob is my friend. I trust him. Bob and I agreed that we really need to shape collective action and march forward with unbreakable unity in serried lines. As a Black man who is a Baha'i, I want racism to be supplanted by the establishment of just relationships among individuals, communities, and institutions of societies that will uplift all of us and not designate anyone as other. As a Baha'i who is a Black man, I expect a lot from us. I expect us to be tactful and wise in our approach, penetrating in utterance, undiscriminating in fellowship, unfailing in sympathy for the downtrodden, courageous in conduct, persevering in action, imperturbable in the face of test, unwavering in our keen sense of justice. Yeah, that's a lot. But we're two old men who have known each other for more than 40 years, who are being obedient and marching forward with unbreakable unity in a serried, arm-linked line of two.
Thank you, Don. He makes much better coffee than I make, that's for sure.
Better coffee pot, Bob.
And he eats escargot and rabbit also. I just want you to know that. Don and I are determined to work together to respond to the call of the House of Justice, and we are a team. We wish that there were 1 million people teaming up to engage the public with the wise approach that's described in this 22 July letter. They tell us that a moment of historic portent has arrived for your nation as the conscience of its citizenry has stirred, creating possibilities for marked change. And we are called upon to play our part in the effort to remedy the ills of your nation.
We ardently pray that American people will grasp the possibilities of this moment to create a consequential reform of the society, of the social order that will free it from the pernicious effects of racial prejudice and will hasten the attainment of a just, diverse, and united society that can increasingly manifest the oneness of the human family. We took note that a just society was mentioned, justice being the foundation of the future unity of the human race. Bob and I will be working together daily, praying together, making sure that we maintain that posture of learning that the House of Justice talks about, and that we listen carefully to each other, that we are clear in our thinking and unified in our actions.
We want to be thorough and meticulous as the House of Justice instructs us to examine the forces unfolding around you, to determine where your energies might reinforce the most promising initiatives and how you might lend a distinctive contribution. Motivated by the crisis we face as a nation and the powerful teachings of our faith, we want to get into the action as soon as possible. We want to share our ideas with our Baha'i friends in hope of sharing our excitement and also benefiting from their wise input and their sincere advice. And after those discussions, we hope to step boldly and confidently into a wider field of action.
We want to be among the agents of the change that our society needs so desperately. At the same time, we want to always be maintaining a humble posture of learning, weighing alternative in the light of his teaching, consulting to harmonize differing views and shape collective action. We want to always remember these words of the House of Justice. Ultimately, the power to transform the world is affected by love. Love originating from the relationship with the divine, love ablaze among members of a community, love extended without restriction to every human being. We are channels for this divine love. Let it flow through us to all who cross our paths. Obviously, we need to be united. Bob and I are taken with these two images given to us in this beautiful letter. One is that we must be united as we engage in this quest for justice. We see an image of all of us marching forward with unbreakable unity in serried lines, and the sacrifice we must make to advance the cause of justice. There can be no rest until the destined outcome is achieved.
There can be no rest until the destined outcome is achieved. We two old guys have talked long enough. John, if you would like to open it up for folks' comments, we would be very, very pleased to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. So we have a question from Susan Jaffers. I was hoping to see if I can find her on the list here to help her unmute. I'm having trouble. If Jeremiah or Bob, you see her name first.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Speak.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, for either of the speakers, I wrote, do we have to keep drilling people unaware of their white privilege that they are privileged? And I'm so sorry to ask this question because I feel like it just kind of backfires on people a lot and people get very defensive. And so should we be adamant and about other, as a white person, I consider myself a brown person. I don't know what the hell I am, honestly, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that I'm talking about, I see a lot of white people attacking other white people about their white privilege. Does that make sense?
How's it worked out when you've had those discussions?
I see that it doesn't really work out. if I feel like the people always get defensive and they're just constantly fighting with each other. So I personally love what you guys just read about what the Universal House of Justice said with it being in the posture of learning and all that. But what do you tell your white friends who are attacking other white people who clearly can't see their own white privilege, how to deal with that?
To me, that's to me is where consultation comes in, knowing what it is and how to use it. And I have difficulty with, in the Baha'i community about this as well. And that we seem to be afraid of each other, that we're going to attack each other. And so therefore we avoid consultation. We avoid talking about it. We don't just talk about it. We have a really important tool. We need to learn how to use it. We need to learn how to share it. So it's not about consultation. It's not about the argument that comes in. I think it's really learning how to use, introducing that tool and how to use it.
What are your thoughts, Bob?
My thoughts are, I'm tired of trying to win arguments. Winning arguments distracts me from doing really what I should be doing. And I need to take care of my side of the street. I need to make sure that my side of the street is clean and that there are no obstacles in front of me. I don't need to be taking somebody else's inventory and saying you are a beneficiary of white privilege. That's not that's an irrelevant argument. They've got to discover that for themselves. And so I really want to echo what Don has said. Let's consult, but let's not consult about where we are or who we are or whatever. Let's consult about what we're going to do. Let's consult about where there is injustice and what are we going to do about the injustice that exists. Make that the topic of your conversation rather than, saying you do this and you do that. Forget it. Point the finger at yourself and say, basically, Bob, you really got to get your act together and work on justice. It's so clear from the writings of Baha'u'llah, from the writings of the House of Justice, that justice is the key to the unity of the human race. There is not going to be justice in this world. I mean, there's not going to be unity in this world until we have justice.
So there was a point actually on the slide you had presented earlier, everybody had seen it, about the reference from the House of Justice letter about taking unique solutions to these problems. We have a world where already the scripts are there. Everyone has the script in front of us as to what everyone else is saying. But we have something unique to offer. We have a message that's unique. We have a message that is providing the means to unite the world. And really, if we take this from a unique perspective, from one that is healing and not one that's confronting, one that's bringing together and one that's not dividing, we can really make a difference. But it needs to be something, again, with consultation and all these very useful tools that we bring in. But again, if we come off as rejecting what someone feels as valid or not, it's completely detracting from what we can offer to solve the problem. And that's exactly in front of our lane, taking down those obstacles so we can go faster and make a more productive difference.
John, are people raising their hands with the electronic hand, with the blue hand? Because somebody has done that.
Yes. So we have one of the questions from Regina, and also I think she has a comment to make. Regina, are you? Can you unmute?
Yeah, I'm on unmute. Let me see.
There you are. We hear you fine.
Okay. If it's the first comment, I think it's important to. I understand now why Abdu'l-Baha visited all of those organizations. Being the spiritual entity he is, he was prescient. In the 90s, I visited the Florence, Alabama NAACP, and they were amazed at Abdu'l-Baha had visited their organization in the early part of the century. It was a great teaching tool. And that's why it was important when he spoke to women's groups and various and sundry other groups. I did want to say this, I've taken a plan, but when we're talking to people, we're encouraged by the faith to be kind in our words. And as our friend said earlier, you get more with kindness. You teach people better with kindness than adversarial actions.
Beautiful.
Very, very beautiful indeed. That is definitely something we should do. So the other item, let's see. We have a question from Alex. Alex has asked this question. I don't know which Alex. We have, I think, a couple of them on. Feel free to speak up, whichever Alex it was that voiced the question to Clearwater Baha'is. I get the relay here. So the question was, I'm thinking of the Baha'i idea that equality of the sexes will only be achieved when men own this equality. How is that relevant with regard to race unity? That's an excellent question. How can both sides be a part to the solution that is this racial injustice?
This is consultation. Doesn't mean that the people who did the presenting have the answers.
Well, we definitely do have some quotes actually from the Baha'i writings, particularly Shogi Effendi. I did not bring it with me, did not prepare to have that quote. But Shogi Effendi, I believe in Advent and Divine Justice. For those of us who are here today who want to refer to that beautiful book, Advent of Divine Justice, it was written of all times in the 1930s, right? 1930s, are we talking? Or earlier?
38.
38, yes. So this was in a heat of a very turbulent period for humanity. May I remind you, Adolf Hitler eventually comes out with his big, bold idea to take over the world, not just a year later after this. So it was a very turbulent time, racially, economically, Great Depression in America, and the world had a depression. You had all these turbulent issues at the same time. So right now we're kind of a similar situation with a pandemic, economic issues, national unrest around the world, international unrest as well, a lot of problems. And this letter from the Guardian, Shogi Effendi, it is provided by Sue. Thank you, Sue. This is beautiful. Okay, is this the entire quote? Okay, let me check. Yes, let's read it. Bob, would you like to read it? It's on the chat to everybody, or would you like to have a guest to read it who is with us today?
This is are we talking about the
Here, I'll read it. It's fine. I'll read it.
let the white make a supreme effort, that one?
Yes, the entirety of that paragraph. Yes.
Okay. Let the white make a supreme effort in their resolve to contribute their share to the solution of this problem, to abandon once and for all their usually inherent and sometimes subconscious sense of superiority. It's pretty clear. To correct their tendency toward revealing a patronizing attitude toward the members of the other race. That's pretty clear. To persuade them through their intimate, spontaneous, and informal association with them of the genuineness of their friendship and the sincerity of their intentions. That's pretty clear. And to master their impatience of any lack of responsiveness on the part of a people who have received for so long a period such grievous and slow healing wounds. Let the black, through a corresponding effort on their part, show by every means in their power the warmth of their response, their readiness to forget the past, and their ability to wipe out every trace of suspicion that may still linger in their hearts and minds. It's a tall order. It's a very difficult order
I don't know about you, but this tall order is something that we're coming in. That's our unique solution. We have something in front of us that is melding together what was once divided. It's bringing together this division, this hatred, making it disappear. All these things are able to be boiled away if we actually actively work towards both parts of that statement. And that's the thing. We had earlier, Don had rightfully mentioned that part of suspicion. When one gets hurt, when you have so much of this destruction that happens, you have this suspicion that naturally arises. It's very, very difficult to genuinely be able to wipe out. It's something that's very difficult. And at the same time, this patronizing attitude, thinking that you have the solution and no one else. The beauty of having Shoyi Effendi come in here as a religious guide, it's that it's not us, it's from these writings. So it's not me, it's not Bob, it's not Don, it's sourcing from these writings that are supposedly the spiritual solution to our world's problems.
Cool. John, are you going to do some of them hands? Some more hands? Who've raised their hands?
I want to make a comment quickly there.
I'm kidding. Don?
Yeah. When Bob and I were putting this together, when we were putting it together, there were things that he said to me that I had passed over. And I look at that line again. It says to consult, to harmonize differing views. And they were views that were kind of pretty invisible to me. And I think the things that I shared with Bob were probably pretty invisible to him. But as we were talking, as we would meet and drink our coffee, we began to understand each other. But we really and he understood what was important to me and what wasn't important to me. I began to understand what was important to him and what wasn't important to him. We don't know each other unless we begin to share with each other and trust each other. And this is consult to harmonize differing views. Some of the things I thought I had to kind of put aside because they weren't important.
That's a very, very good point.
Thanks. Sue and Butch have had their hands up for a while.
Yes. Butch, do you need us to unmute you or you got it?
I got it.
We're okay.
We got it.
Okay, cool.
Getting back to Susie's initial point, the discomfort of bringing up white privilege with white people. I'm convinced that in order for us to get over the race problem, white people are going to have to experience discomfort, going from an area of ignorance to an area of understanding. That's discomfort. So I'm not sure exactly how we do that, but I just, white people cannot get a pass on this. They have to grow. And what Susie was trying to do was invite them to grow. So we have to figure out, and we should bring in secular understanding of these things. People have written books about white privilege. I think all white people have to go through a catharsis. Maybe some already have. But it's been my experience in the context of the faith over the years that I haven't met any white people that I can feel really went through that catharsis within the faith. And so we've got a long way to go, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to get there if white people do not have some discomfort in trying to grow from being ignorant about it, which is a privilege, and not having to expand their view and understand and have empathy with people who put up with this for 400 years. And it can't, and it's not the time for cliches and platitudes. We have to get down and dirty, and we have to do that in a loving way as Baha'is. But we have to really dig deep. We have to really get down and look at this really close. Thank you.
So we also had a question. I think Robert Green had his hand raised as well. Robert?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I've been a Baha'i since 1969 when my mom declared. I was 3. We were living in Washington, D.C. My happiest memory, I'll be 54 next week. That's 51 years. My happiest memories, my entire life, running around the Washington, D.C. Baha'i Center at 3. You guys showed me so much love that I fell in love with Baha'u'llah before I was done potty training. As I grew older, I wondered what happened to that love that you showed to me when I was 3. I thought it was me for a very, 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 very long time. I've, through my history, read everything I could get my hands on that was written in English. And they're talking to me. It says thee, but I hear Robert. Robert, we created you noble. And yeah, we created John and Arkaran and Donald and Bob Noble too. You do not have to let them treat you less than noble unless you want to and you think there is a teachable moment in it. I humble myself to get us to this conversation. I have this voice in my head saying, Robert, we would not be here had you not stood up 5 years ago and read that quote, let neither think, and said racist bitches right after it. Let neither think racist bitches right after it. Let neither think, because we are not doing what our writings tell us. And the Abdul Baha, he said, Robert, don't be mad at him. But you do have to stand on the hill where the banner was planted and tell them to their faces that they are racist. The system is racist. It was created racist. And if I don't tell you, you won't look. If I don't tell you I'm sitting in a feast and I can't breathe, you won't look. If I'm sitting in a feast and I'm got my feast face on to make you comfortable, the world does not change. Baha'u'llah said, Robert, I love you as much as I love everybody else. But if you don't stand up today, I'm going to burn the world to the ground and start over. And you will be here, Robert Green, in 14.5 billion years making this decision again. I said 14 trillion and 2 times is enough. God, I surrender. I control nothing. Whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do it. He said, get up and call them racist bitches every day until you die. Or until they hear you. As soon as they hear you, they take responsibility for their own racism. I don't have to tell you you're a racist bitch if you are taking the responsibility to pull that stuff from yourself. 3/5 of a human being from the day the Constitution was written. You have never felt that I was a full 5/5 human being. I have to show you my credentials to get a word in edgewise. It took 5 years to get you to this table with me. I've been having this conversation for 30 years with Susan Reedy and Gwen Pendleton and the members of the Center for the Healing of Racism, because we understand racism is an emotional commitment to ignorance. If you just want to talk and don't want to get psychological and philosophical and emotional, all you're doing is talking. I don't get no help. You don't get no help. We don't change. I am the nicest guy you have ever met, except Paul, I said, you can't be nice when you're talking about racism. I will give you the shirt off my back, the food out my kitchen. I will walk to you to sit with you while you cry. I want to cry because God loves our tears. It means he knows we feel what's going on in the world. I'm crying for Beirut. I'm crying for the Baha'is in Persia. I'm crying for everybody who's in pain. And we have the answers. And we have the answers. Robert, we have the answers. Don't let that fill you with pride. Because when you are full of pride, your words have less or no effect. It's humble. It's humility. God wants us to find him. We're keeping each other away because we don't know how to find him. We don't read the writings and read between the lines, which is what he tells us to do. Every word has 71 meanings. Why are you stuck on the one that you can see?
Amazing.
I've been a Baha'i all my life. It took me a while to recognize Baha'i. I said, you're all Baha'is. Some know it, some don't. There's nobody on the planet that doesn't fall under my bounties. Your job is to help them find out that relationship they have with me for themselves. And you do that by you having a relationship with me. The smile on your face because of your relationship with me is what attracts people. Robert, why the hell are you always smiling? I'm happy. The world's going to crap. Well, heaven doesn't care about the world, and we can live in heaven.
Yeah, Robert, your connection's going out, but we really,
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I wanted, we had someone patiently having his hand raised for a long time. Francis Hayden, please, we appreciate it if you could make your comment, question. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
it's very good. It's very nice to be here. I remember Bob at Greenacre. Thank you, Bob. And Mr. Camp and everybody here. The first thing I did when as a young college student in 1989, I was in med school. She informed me about that we still had a race problem. And I grew up with this idea of one happy family, and I had just become a Baha'i. So this young biracial undergrad gave me To Be One by Nathan Rutstein, and I read it. I thought, okay, I got to get to work here. So me and Bruce Kinzinger decided we would go visit a Black church, mainly to try to experience what's it like to be the only in a room. We were welcomed. It was a wonderful experience, but that was the beginning of the race work that I've been doing since. The crucible I've been in the last 7 years is I have I have a Dominican lady. These are two young women, Dominican lady and an African-American lady that run my medical practice. And they try the darndest to teach me basic proper behavior. And it took me about 6 years to figure out some of the basic things they were telling me. And if I had not been a Baha'i, I would have probably had my own mental breakdown. So it's a practice that it takes everybody. We accept insurance, it's psychiatry, you hardly ever find that. So it's kind of a jewel in the community. I take hardly any money out of it. I make sure the staff is paid well. I make sure they have benefits, they're raising their families, they're in charge. It's been humbling because my natural inclination, even though I think I'm a nice guy, a lot of us think we're nice guys, we're not so nice. I want to appreciate Mr. Green for emoting. A lot of Baha'is don't emote. So I know there's something wrong with me. You know, I heard about the explosion in Lebanon. The horriblest things I can see, and I don't feel anything. I have to use my intellectual powers to get involved in these things. So as a white man, the first thing I think that we are taught is to become numb to the suffering of others. And so, but I'm not completely numb, and I do have a heart, and I do have a spirit, and I do have a commitment to justice. So the work, if you're a Baha'i and you want to get involved in race stuff, it's hard. You're going to be tested because it's not always going to be clear whether you should go left or right or center. It's going to screw you up. So stay close to the writings, stay in these discussions, listen, and listen some more. And the more I think I know something, the more I realize I don't. So it's just great work to be doing. And it's the most important activity, I think, for Americans to be doing, because if America is the key to world peace, the thing that's holding us back is the black-white racism in the United States. And we have all the guidance we need in the writings, but we have to put it into practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
May I add one thing, please? And that as Baha'is, we have a common love of Baha'u'llah. I mean, a common love of Baha'u'llah, a common set of directions. And I think those paying attention to that with all of us, I think that will get us past a lot of superfluous talk and really get us to share who we are with each other and become true friends. And how does the house put it? United in serried lines. Well, I'll tell them what serried means, by the way. You added a special thing onto that I didn't know.
Serried lines is where you take your arms and you put your arm inside of someone else's arm, and you're shoulder to shoulder, and you're marching through, and you are connected to each other so that you cannot break apart. It is unbreakable lines. Abdu'l-Baha uses this many times about serried lines, and it just makes you a unit. It makes you a unit. Is that what you wanted me to say, John?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay. Can I raise my hand for a second? Lots of folks in the chat are really brought to tears by both what Robert said and what Francis said. Francis is my favorite shrink. Most other shrinks are a little bit, but Francis, it is so important that we hear what Robert said and that we allow it to penetrate ourselves. And I'm going to talk out of school a little bit here. But Don has told me some things that he has encountered in his life. And these are things that I would never encounter in my life because I am on the top of the heap. I am a white male. I am 6'6". I am kind of a dominant person in this society. It's by luck that this happened to me. But I've got to realize that I'm lucky. I've got to realize that I have this white privilege and not use it, and purposely not use it, and consciously not use it. Don has told me some stories about things that he has experienced because he does not have that white privilege. And I said to him, Don, I said, you got to say that. Please say that to everybody. It's taken him 40 years to say it to me.
Yeah.
And he said, Bob, he said, I don't want people to think that I am trying to vilify white people, that I am trying to indict white people, that I'm against white people. I don't want them to think that. And it is such a position that we put people in where they can't say, I mean, what killed me about Robert, what Robert says is, I'm sitting in a feast, he says, and I can't breathe. What is going on when you're sitting in a feast and you can't breathe? What is wrong with the atmosphere in that room? What are we not doing? And Don and I, after 40 years, have figured out that we are just not close enough friends. We are not close enough friends. We need to be inside of each other's shirts. We need to be inside of each other's heads. We need a friend who we can talk to.
Yep.
And my earnest prayer for this presentation is that everybody find a friend. Find yourself a friend. Trust that person. Help that person trust you. Read what Shoghi Effendi said about superiority. That's white privilege, my friends. That's white privilege. Think about what Shoghi Effendi said about trusting. It's hard for Don to trust me. Don said to me, how long did you know me before you trusted me? I said, 13 seconds, you know? I am not putting anything on the line by trusting Don, because I have so much privilege in this society. I can trust anybody and not have it really affect me. I can be open. Don said, it's only in the past few years, the past few months actually, that I really figured out that I could understand your motives. This is what Don said to me. I trusted him after 13 seconds. It's taken him decades to trust me. Because when he trusts me, he's putting his life on the line.
Yeah.
I hope we get that. I hope we get that. My blood pressure's up.
We all hope so too. We wanted to say that we have our hard stop at 12:30. So I wanted that we can get our closing remarks out, and then we can close out for today, because we have to prepare for our next talk that is happening with Dr. Fana Pazir and Islam at the Crossroads.
Sure. Can I just ask, Robert, I put in the chat that I sent you my number, and if you would send me your number, I really want to be in touch with you. I think that I need a couple more doses of Robert Greene. So if you would please send me your number in the chat, that would be awesome for me. Thank you.
Yes, and more importantly, if there's any trouble for whatever reason getting in contact, clearwaterbahais@gmail.com, clearwaterbahais.org. Go there and use the contact panel. Also, we have our Facebook. You can contact us through, and also it shows. Yeah, Francis Hayden. I see you're providing messages, but it's going to me. It's not going directly to Robert. I'm gonna be cutting the feed soon. So just know that contact us, Francis and Robert Greene, Francis Hayden, Robert Greene, contact out to us, and we can continue the conversation there. So Bob and Don, thank you so much for coming out today, giving such a heartfelt, powerful talk on this extremely important issue and a call to action. And thank you everyone who have, and I know we have some raised hands and also people have asked questions that I put up, but we just quite honestly don't have enough time anymore. So again, let's continue this conversation. Let's continue this conversation.
Thanks so much for the local assembly of Clearwater for helping.
Yes. Thanks to the Clearwater.
Thank you.
Available.
Find a